My name is Doug Lutz from Nova Chemicals. So my question is for Doug, and actually it's common for all the panelists. My question is, when you're striving to do bold things, there's undoubtedly some expectation that you might have some challenges along the way and some failures. So what did you do to encourage your team to take those risks and make those failures along those ways to get to your success in the end?
Well, go ahead, Doug. You can start.
Well, I'm thinking about that one.
Please hold the mic close to your. You will see it will automatically come on. Yeah.
The one advantage I had here is that the folks at NASA are used to taking risks. The issue becomes managing those risks, really. Sometimes they'll push a little too far, which is kind of the experience, as I mentioned, about the first reaction to the sky crane, right? So you feel like we're pushing too far. So the issue really is managing folks' appetite for risk. We seem to be willing to accept more risk than maybe we ought to at times. But the whole thing boils down to test. At least for us, it boils down to test. So the way to keep the folks encouraged in the face of failures, the way we did it, was simply to keep working at it. All right? I mean, we had a number of, let's take the parachute as an example. We had a number of parachute failures, and we didn't really understand it, which is where we brought in, I think it was University of Michigan was the first group that we grabbed that had a computational fluid dynamics expert and said, what tools, is this a tool that we could use to understand what this inflation problem is? Because what happens is the chutes would breathe, and the interaction between the forebody, which was the aeroshell itself, and the parachute set up an airflow that the parachute would breathe. It would breathe like this. And sometimes it would simply collapse, which is a bad thing, and sometimes it would eventually just remain inflated. So it was a matter of bringing new tools to the problem. It was a matter of being patient with the problem, and it was a matter of just testing it and testing it and testing it again, but not without making changes and making controlled changes. The advantage I have, like I said at the beginning, is my teams love that problem. They love to figure those things out, so they don't easily get discouraged by it. So I think I have an advantage in some ways. And being not profit-driven, for the sake of other folks, being not profit-driven, we can take our time to figure this out, right? I mean, my equivalent of profit is the fact I've got a launch window I got to make, and if I miss it, I got 26 months I got to wait till the next opportunity. That's a huge incentive to get on with it, like profit is in many other groups. But nonetheless, we also have that motivation.
Anyone else? Would you like to comment, Patty? No? Yeah,
sure.
Go ahead.
Excuse me. I think in our organization, I think ExxonMobil, we're known for structure, discipline, management systems. That is definitely our lifeblood. In fact, Doug and I were talking earlier, how do we ensure that instead of managing risk, we become risk averse? And if we are risk averse, then we don't have the products, we don't have the reliability, and yes, we don't have the profitability. And so what we try to do is we have an expression, we don't want to be surprised. And a surprise is different than risk averse. A surprise means I understand the risk, I've identified the consequences, I understand the probability, and I've defined a risk mitigation plan. And that could be how many experiments does it take to develop a new technology, how many samples do I need, etc. But understanding the risk and the technology, I'm an engineering manager, so the technology provider and the business provider jointly, and at times vendors and other suppliers, we all need to understand the risk. We are jointly taking that risk together, we hold hands, and then we go forward. And risk means the probability is once in a while it's not going to work, otherwise it's not risk. And so I think that's the way we try to balance it. In our case, we do have to ensure we aren't risk averse. That would not be productive. By the same token, we don't need surprises. We know how to manage risk.
Andy?
Yeah,
Maybe one comment regarding the motivational part. We love customers like Miguel San Martin. You remember? Everybody was incredibly happy how this landing happened. And the feedback we received from JPL and from NASA, how they were able to virtually test it, was extremely positive. But then comes one of the members of the customers comes to you and says, but we were actually 250 meters off. What happened? And this is just fantastic. I mean, seriously, this is great to have these kind of partners where you then go through and you say, well, how can we improve even further? That's a great motivation for the team to work on.
The risk is very, very important for managing risk for all of you guys. Kailori-san, would you like to say how can you help companies manage risk?
Normally, Japanese companies recognize as not risk takers, but of course, for the R&D, especially R&D, you have to encourage to take a risk. Of course, the risk management is very important, but we put on emphasis. Of course, if we can predict all the possible case of risk, it's nice. But at the final end, we put on very much emphasis for low stress environment. Test. But we cannot expect all the conditions. So we put on the extraordinary stress and the environment to validate our risk analysis right or not. That is the typical way in Yokogawa.
Okay, good. You are welcome to pitch in if you want, Jody. Go ahead, Blake.
Sure. Just a couple of comments on additional ways that we can help manage risk. To start with, providing assessments as part of a team with end users to help better define the business problem, extending to the areas of both machine safety as well as process safety. In the control system, being able to provide additional visibility to problems, as was mentioned in some of the earlier comments, and then finally to be able to provide service contracts that provide a guaranteed response and incorporate predictive analytics to be able to identify problems before they become serious.
Good. Thanks. Jody?
I think one other point I'd jump in on the question was, how do you inspire people also to take risks? When you think about solving customer problems, you have to inspire your engineering community, your technology community, to think about what I think we heard with the Mars landing. I took away biology, chemistry, material science, the great thought leadership of the sciences today coming together to take a risk, to develop an industrial machine to land on Mars. You couple that with the power of controls and software to then reduce that risk in the eye of the beholder, the customer, and whatever application space that they have requires you to, again, think about what they need. What are they worried about? What do they need to deliver? How do they need to perform? So you have to marry that with a strong external focus, a customer focus that understands what problem am I trying to solve for that customer, combining that with inspiration of that technology team, of collaboration, bringing together how to best solve that problem.
Good. We have talked a lot here about the human side, how important it is to manage the risk. Any technologies, can technologies help? How do you leverage some of the newer technologies to help you manage your risk and increase the success rate? Anyone? Maybe do you want to start? Go ahead, Jody.
So I referenced in my opening comments about a performance center that we have in Chicago where we're using a combination of physics-based algorithms and statistical-based algorithms to find failure. The objective is to find failure before it happens. So it's using the deep domain. In that case, it was in the power segment. The deep domain that we have in GE to understand how the equipment operates from a design perspective, combining that with a strong emphasis on math, on statistics, bringing that together to try to find problems through monitoring that equipment before they happen. Not to root cause, but try to find it before it happens. That reduces risk for those operators of that station in terms of safety, downtime, expectations to their end customers. So it's that type of example of bringing together the power of that technology in that domain to risk reduce for the end customer?
Good, excellent. Go ahead, Blake.
Yeah, I think we are seeing a bit of a shift from maybe the more traditional ways of providing support with embedded resources on site, and some of us in the industrial space are learning from the enterprise IT suppliers by providing the kind of remote support that Jody's talking about, because it's a faster way to provide support, and it also allows you to employ big data to be able to make better decisions based on historical performance. And so we're seeing that move really rapidly accelerate to providing that kind of support, but really based on the backbone of an efficient remote support system.
Good, excellent. Patty?
I think just to add, the remote support in high-risk opportunities is important. Our upstream operations, as you know, we operate in many countries around the world, not your Parises, not your Londons, but some of your other climes. And so using the collection of data, the monitoring, sending it back to a remote center significantly empowers the long-distance employees to provide value. In our refineries, our chemical plants, we collect a lot of data. In fact, I was talking to somebody in the hallway recently, and one of the challenges, how do you mine all of that, and how do you turn it into knowledge, not just data? And we found that the application of abnormal event detection is very powerful in taking data, analyzing it, similar to a previous comment, and predicting what might happen if that trend continues, if that behavior continues, and you might actually have a feedback loop where you adjust controls, or you send an advisory to an operator or an engineer that allows them to respond early in that abnormal state as opposed to once the event occurs. And I think we've been talking a lot about safety risk, environmental risk, but also, back to the profitability, there's financial risk. And so when you think about in a company like ours where the supply chain is not just miles, it's days, it's weeks, you put crude on a boat in one part of the world, you aim it towards a refinery in another part of the world or a feedstock in a chemical plant, and a lot can happen during that journey. And so using data, economics, optimization models, how do you plan where it goes? How do you schedule how it runs? What's the optimal mix of product slate such that when it's truly done and it hits the market, it's what the market needs and what the customers need. And so the whole science, if you will, of optimization, offline, sometimes online, using the business data, the chemistry, what crude and what plant to make what products, all of those are another, if you will, risk management dimension that I think technology has had a very strong place, and I know it's something that we hold near and dear in our company.
Could we poll the room? Any questions there? Any hands? All right. Clint, right behind you. Right behind you. Oh, okay, go ahead.
I'd be interested in understanding from Doug how you created an environment where failure is acceptable. So trying and failing is just as good as trying and succeeding.
I'm not sure I go quite as far as saying it was just as good as trying to succeed. There is a point where you have to succeed to be able to accomplish the mission. Retribution is the key. People felt very empowered to bring any, and this boils down to a discussion that we were having earlier about risks versus problems. So the environment that we put together was one where everyone was empowered to talk about risks, to bring up risks, no matter how minor they thought they might be. And in many cases, a minor risk could actually, in a couple of cases, did turn out to either require mitigation or turned into a major problem that we had to resolve. And people were rewarded for that. They were patted on the back for that. They were encouraged to go forward in that arena. And if things failed, that's fine. It's fine, as long as everybody keeps their eye on the schedules ball primarily. And there's not and again, a retribution issue isn't necessarily a personal retribution issue, but it becomes a financial problem as well, right? I mean, the 2-year slip that we had to put in place was a $500 million budget change, right? So we went from a $2 billion mission to a $2.5 billion mission. which is a very difficult thing in the federal government's current environment to sell. So that retribution comes back and ripples all the way through the program. The good part is Congress understood the importance of this program, and the White House understood the importance of this mission as well. And so with a little bit of pain and suffering, we were able to get through that. But it wasn't taken out on anybody, right? I mean, failures occur when you're pushing technology as hard as we were pushing technology. And as long as people realize that, and that there's not a ramification is better than retribution. No ramifications negatively for bringing problems up and working those. The environment remains positive. People remain motivated.
Good. Excellent. Anyone else had a comment? No?
I guess just something I'd like to add to what Doug said. Oftentimes we talk about risk, we talk about performance. We can be very statistics driven. And if you only watch the numbers and you forget the people, then people become depersonalized and all of a sudden you're risk averse as opposed to value driven. And one of the things that we found in the last couple of years is, yes, we follow statistics, we look at things, but also what we've done is to encourage sharing. And so we ask people to encourage success sharing, challenges or risk events in a collaborative fashion. And so we monitor, did you share this month, in addition to, and much more frequently than, what were your actual performance statistics? And we found it takes a long time. Managers have to lead by example. I think as engineering managers, we're very inquisitive. We like to ask questions. Well, you know, if you're 30 years younger than the manager, that sounds like a gotcha game as opposed to a sincere curiosity engagement. But I think leaders need to behave right. They definitely need to reward different behavior, out-of-the-box thinking, and in addition, motivate an environment where peers support each other, learn from each other in a non-threatening way.
Go ahead.
Maybe, Patty, let me add to that. You're absolutely right. It's more than just a system. It's the people, it's a culture. And now let me bring this to a topic which I think we all are very sensitive about, cybersecurity. The executive order is going to come out during the next days. We don't know exactly when, but most probably there will be an executive order coming out on this, which will influence all of us. And Siemens has been connected at some point in time to some issues there. And there's the old rule applies. Never let a good crisis go to waste. We invested very heavily into products, and we just brought some new products out which have included security features in systems, but then comes the point. With this, nothing is done yet. You really have to have the right procedures. And what we do today is, also in our own factories, we have about 100 factories here, all in North America. Also in our own factories, we go through with audits and look through every corner and understand what is the heightened risks there, potentially through cybersecurity. And I think there the point is, or cyber attacks, and there the key point is that you cover all of the above. You cover the products, you cover the systems, you cover the procedures, you cover the culture.